All right, good evening. I call to order the regular meeting of the Grover Beach City Council, Monday, September 8th, 2025. Are our microphones on? Can you hear me? They're on? Okay. Okay. Oh, that's better. Thank you. Sorry. All right. Good evening. I call to order the regular meeting of the Grover Beach City Council, Monday, September 8th, 2025. This meeting may also be viewed on cable channel 20 in Grover Beach and is available on live streaming on www.slow-span.org. Members of the public may provide public comment during the meeting by attending the meeting or calling 805-321-6639, and the phone line is now open. Tonight, our flag salute will be presented by Meadow Miller, so you can come on up right here and I'll talk about you a little bit. Meadow is 7 years old and in the second grade at Fairgrove Elementary School. Meadow likes art and science in school and enjoys spending time with her big buddies also. She enjoys living on the Central Coast because she loves camping at Lake Lopez. She rides her bike, fishes, and makes new friends when she is there. Meadow desires to be an artist. Outside of school, her hobbies include playing at the park with her friends, building Legos, camping, riding bikes, and playing with her dogs. Meadow is accompanied by her family, Dakota, Jennifer, and Maple. So now we're all going to rise, and Meadow will take the lead.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Over here, Meadow, really quick. We're going to take a picture with you, okay? Okay, now for the roll call, City Clerk Sims, please.
Councilmember McCory Driscoll.
Here.
Councilmember Tuggle.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Robert.
Here.
Mayor D.
Here. All right, closed session announcements. City Attorney Lamelli.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have one announcement. At 10:01 p.m., Mayor D reconvened the meeting in open session with all council members present and announced that a motion was made by Councilmember Tuggle to join and enter into Purdue-Sackler National Opioid Settlement. Motion was seconded by Councilmember Wyrick. The motion was carried on the following roll call vote. Councilmember McCory Driscoll, yes. Councilmember Tuggle, yes. Councilmember Wyrick, yes. Mayor Pro Tem Robert, yes. And Mayor D, yes.
Thank you so much. On to the agenda review. Council members, any of you want to make any changes or have any questions? No, then can I get a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Now we will move on to our ceremonial calendar, and we have a proclamation for National Palmilla Recognition Day, and I believe Welcome Home Military Heroes is here to accept it.
Thank you for being here. We're going to read this proclamation for the 19th of September because we don't meet again until the 22nd. But proclamation, the Grover Beach City Council declaring September 19th, 2025 as a National POW MIA Recognition Day. Whereas on this day, we gather as a community to honor and remember brave men and women who have served our nation with unwavering dedication and who, as prisoners of war, POWs, or missing in action, MIAs, have made extraordinary sacrifices to the defense of our freedom and the principles we hold dear. Whereas we recognize that the families of these courageous individuals have endured the pain of separation and the anguish of uncertainty, bearing a heavy burden as they await the return of their loved ones. Our seeks closure and solace through the knowledge that their sacrifices were not forgotten. Whereas on National POW MIA Recognition Day, may we honor the remarkable bravery, sacrifice, and commitment to service of former prisoners of war and continue to keep the flame of liberty burning bright, earnestly searching for those still missing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Grover Beach City Council does hereby officially proclaim September 19th, 2025 as National POW MIA, recognizing and honoring our POWs and our MIAs, their families, and all those who have served in our armed forces with courage and distinction. Thank you.
Do you want to come? Go ahead and you can speak, and then we're going to take a picture.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Picture.
Okay, my name is Dennis Hennessy. I'm on the board of Welcome Home Military Heroes. I'm on the board of Vietnam Veterans of America, the Central Coast. And I'm also the Missing in America Project Recovery Officer working for Veteran Services in San Luis Obispo County. And we consider all military that served with honor, bravery, whether it be peacetime or wartime, as heroes. And I'd like to read to you the mission statement of Welcome Home Military Heroes because that might not be well known by a lot of people. Dedicated to showing honor, respect, and gratitude to our veterans, those currently serving, and those who have paid the ultimate price for our freedoms. Inspire our communities by demonstrating an awareness about patriotism and appreciation for our veterans and military service members. This organization started about 15 years ago with a welcome home to troops coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. They were at the airport giving the welcome home that Vietnam veterans may not have received when they came home in the 60s. No protests, just a grand welcome home by everyone who would show up. Next week, the honor flight leaves on the 15th of September. It'll come home on the 17th. There will probably be several hundred people at San Mateo. I'm from the Bay Area originally. Santa Maria Airport. We get several hundred people down there to give a welcome home. There will be a couple of World War II veterans on that flight, a Korean War veteran. The rest are Vietnam veterans because we have now gotten to that point where World War II and Korean veterans have made that trip. 1979, at the encouragement of Vietnam veteran families that had lost someone in the war, encouraged President Carter to establish POW MIA Day. The Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency has that service to recover the people who are missing. Of course, the prisoners of war who have returned, they survived the cruelest punishment probably there is. With the missions of Welcome Home Military Heroes, we do military packages, military care packages. In December, we'll have trees in various organizations that people can pick up a tag that service people who service poor families that are veterans. We call them veterans in need. They'll put tags on these giving trees, and people can pick up those tags. We've done about 150 caravan birthday salutes. I've met POWs that have survived the Bataan Death March. We do visits to give the last salute to somebody in hospice. I met a veteran who served 3 years in prison, or as a prisoner of war, during the Korean War. As his battalion, armor battalion, got captured, everybody was a prisoner of war for during that time. He escaped 3 times and came home at the end of the war when the prisoners were released and wrote a book about that experience. He passed away a few years ago in Santa Maria. But this is quite an experience that we have. Not a lot of people know we do this, but you might see us on TV down at the airport in Santa Maria on the evening of the 17th. So I appreciate the proclamation, and okay, we take a photo? Sure, yeah, let's do that.
Any comments from our council members before our guests leave?
Thank you for all you do. We appreciate it. So do
Councilmember
they.
McCreary.
I want to say thank you as well. I come from a very long line of military family, and my late husband actually was one of those that received hospice care. He passed away at a VA hospital, and I just want to thank you for taking care of all of our veterans, our POWs, and our MIAs. Thank you very much.
And I want to also thank them all for their sacrifice and service to, especially those that we're still trying to get back home, and obviously and stuff for Welcome Home Military Heroes has been doing things for a long time. I've been part of those flag lines, and they got long with a lot of energy and stuff too for the right way. In addition to VVA, American Legion, VFWs, all of you and stuff who do all the different work too to continue to support all of our veterans and military families. A lot of times, we forget even when it comes to POW MIA Day that we're talking about those individuals, but their families are the ones also here too. So thank you for everything that you all continue doing.
Thank you. I am, as the mother of a Green Beret who's currently deployed in Africa, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here and to Welcome Home Heroes. Everything you do, I see you all over the place, and what you do for our veterans is just absolutely phenomenal. So thank you so, so much. All right, anything else? No? Thank you. All right, next we will move on to our presentation. We have a 3CE annual update presented by Spencer Brandt, Community Relations Manager, and Doss Williams, Senior Advisor for Policy and Legislative Affairs. Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much, Mayor Dee. My name is Spencer Brandt. I'm the Community Relations Manager for Central Coast Community Energy. We had hoped that Doss Williams and the city's customer account manager, Judy Young, could be here, but they send their well wishes today. I'm here to give you an annual update on 3CE's programs and activities in the city of Grover Beach. So just as some background, what is 3CE? 3CE, or Central Coast Community Energy, is the public agency that sources electricity for communities along the Central Coast. So we work in partnership with PG&E, and PG&E continue to manage the transmission and distribution of that energy. While they are maintaining the lines and the infrastructure, 3CE has agreements with producing projects, so things like solar, wind, geothermal. That means that since 2021, a charge that used to be on your bill from PG&E has been removed, and in its place, there is now one from 3CE. We serve 1.2 million people across 30 cities and 5 counties, and this January, the city of Atascadero and the county of San Luis Obispo became our newest member agencies. In 2024, we delivered 409 megawatts of renewable electricity. That's enough to power more than 350,000 homes entirely with clean energy. And by doing so, we avoided over 445,000 metric tons of carbon emissions. That's the equivalent of taking around 105,000 gasoline-powered cars off the road for a full year. We are also on a path to deliver 100% clean and renewable energy 10 to 15 years ahead of the state's timeline. That means that by October 2028, renewable energy is projected to make up 69% of our energy mix. I'd like to take a moment to talk about energy storage because this is a common question that we've been getting, especially this year. Energy storage is essential for California's transition to carbon-free electricity. And it's just as important to affordability for our customers. So energy storage can help store renewable energy during the day and then release it when we need it most, during that evening peak hour demand time from 4 to 9 p.m. At a utility scale, energy storage reduces our reliance on fossil fuels, and for customers, battery energy storage in the home can be a critical element of resilience during power outages and can help customers take greater control over their energy usage. So to illustrate this, if you'll allow me, I'd like to take a look at what California's energy mix looked like in September 2022. This was Labor Day weekend. You remember Labor Day weekend in 2022, it was hot. It was over 100 degrees here on the coast. And this was the last time that California had what's called a flex alert, which is a statewide call to reduce energy consumption to avoid rolling blackouts. You may remember getting a text message from the governor asking you to reduce your energy consumption. Well, you'll see what it looked like that day. So green is renewables, red is fossil fuels, and then there's a tiny orange line at the bottom. That's orange, that battery storage. And then at the top, you'll see battery storage orange being deployed onto the grid during that peak hour demand. Now let's compare this to a more recent heat wave. This was July 4th of last year, and you'll see a couple things are different. First, the renewables have grown to become a much larger share of our energy, and so has energy storage grown. Now we have about 3 times as much energy storage charging in the morning and then releasing when we need it most during that peak evening demand. And that's helped the red fossil fuel section become smaller. That's significant because that red section is the most expensive type of energy that we procure for our customers. And so it's allowing us to help avoid those expensive charges. This year, we've also received questions from community members about energy storage safety, so I'd like to highlight a couple key facts. First, 3CE does not have any power purchase agreements like the facility in Moss Landing in Monterey County. All of our agreements are with facilities that are outdoors, that use containerized systems, and that meet the latest fire and building code requirements. The safety data, as you can see here, is also encouraging. In the same time that there was an over 25,000% increase in the deployment of energy storage globally, there's been a 98% reduction in fires. I think this is really helpful at understanding energy storage in an evolving landscape, and I appreciate you indulging me. We also know that, or we are also making investments in some cutting edge types of energy storage, like the Willow Rock Energy Storage Center. This is using compressed air to power turbines on demand. And once it's completed, it'll be the largest compressed air storage project in the world. We also have a number of solar plus storage projects under development. This past May, Victory Pass, as you can see here, came online and started delivering power to our customers. And in total, these projects represent enough power for 250,000 homes on the Central Coast. We also know that delivering the energy and keeping the lights on is only part of our mission. Connecting with our communities is really essential. And in 2024, we hosted events, webinars, and conducted workshops on our energy programs. We've also partnered with community-based organizations, including chambers of commerce, to help increase the awareness of our programs for our customers. And here is a little overview of some of our programs. Our flagship program is Electrify Your Ride, and you may have heard of it. It provides between $1,000 and $4,000 for the purchase of a qualifying new or used electric vehicle. We have additional programs that help cover the cost of electrifying home appliances, of electrifying new construction for accessory dwelling units, which is quite popular. In fact, I know that this has been utilized here in the city of Grover Beach, as well as targeted money to support the electric equipment needs of our agricultural sector. We also have programs specifically for public agencies to help cover the cost of replacing fleet vehicles, including everything from light-duty pool cars to heavier-duty equipment like street sweepers. And so sister programs to that include Plan Your Fleet and Charge Your Fleet, which supplement the planning and infrastructure costs of electrification. Our electric bus program is often utilized by school districts and public transit agencies, and our REACH code program assists city staff with developing REACH codes. Since I'm sure you're curious, I want to provide a breakdown of how 3CE is invested in Grover Beach and how you measure up when it compares to neighboring jurisdictions. So some good news is that up to $300,000 per year is available to the city for those electrification costs, installing EV chargers, transitioning your fleet to become electric, and addressing those needs. We find that many cities are using those dollars to help comply with the state's advanced clean fleet mandates that are coming down the pike. And others are also using chargers as a really helpful economic development tool to drive foot traffic to commercial areas. Lastly, I want to provide a timely legislative update. H.R. 1, otherwise known as the Big Beautiful Bill Act, has impacts on 3CE's customers that I'd like to share with you. First, the bill eliminated federal tax credits for electric vehicles after September 30th of this year. And so we are really encouraging customers to maximize their savings if they're considering purchasing an electric vehicle or making a home energy upgrade, to do that before the deadline happens. You can stack the savings that you get from the federal tax credit with the programs that 3CE provides. H.R. 1 also eliminates tax credits for utility scale solar and wind projects that haven't broken ground by 2027. And these projects are much quicker and cheaper to build than the natural gas alternative, which means that the reality is in the medium term, energy prices are likely to rise because there won't be enough production online to meet growing demand. To address this, 3CE is supporting the Pathways Initiative, which would create a regional market for energy across 10 other Western states with California. This will help us be able to sell excess renewable energy that we produce during the day and generate nearly $800 million in annual savings for Californians. Looking ahead, advancing legislation to improve resource adequacy is another thing that we will be pursuing that will have benefits for customer costs. And that's all I have for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions from the council. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I will start with questions or comments to my left.
I have just one question. When you talked about the tax incentives going away for electric vehicles, are you saying September this year or 2026?
Council member, that's September 30th of this year is the deadline for EVs.
Wow.
And the deadline for home energy upgrades is December 31st of this year.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. One, just because not everyone knows what you meant when you said, could you define what a REACH code is? Just since that's more.
Yes, council member. A REACH code is an energy efficiency code that requires greater energy efficiency in new construction. Many cities have been pursuing these, both on the Central Coast in our jurisdiction and throughout the state of California as well. And our technical assistance program helps provide city staff with the expertise and knowledge, particularly in the planning and building side of things, to be able to adopt those codes.
Perfect. And then also, as far as, like you said, since some of the federal tax program stuff are going away soon too, but you also mentioned that in the meantime, they could be stacked with your own programs. Are your staff able to assist our different residents, businesses, and others who might be able to seek that as far as facilitating to make sure they're looking at both simultaneously, since you will track that more?
Yes, council member. The answer is yes. The good thing to know is that the federal tax credits right now are redeemable at the dealer. So that means that when someone goes into a car dealership, whether they're buying new or used, they can sign the form on the spot and receive the discount at the dealer on that vehicle. In private party sales, there's also a way to make that happen. I will also share that we have a partnership with Ecology Action and Slow Climate Coalition, two local nonprofits, to help guide people that are interested in purchasing electric vehicles through the process of redeeming those rebates. So evsforeveryone.com is a great resource for folks that may need a little bit of assistance going through that rebate process to be able to maximize their savings.
Thank you very much.
Questions to my right?
Thank you for that presentation. It was very informative. So we just go to 3synergy.org and get all this information for as far as how to apply for the.
Yes, Councilmember, 3ce.org is our website, and our program, or a page there that has information about
3C
residential and
Energy.
commercial
Oh, it's
programs.
up there too. It's 3 not Synergy. Okay. Thank you.
I'm good. That was my question. Is if a community member wants to access these programs, what's the best way to go about it? So, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
And actually, one thing too I forgot is since it's a governance one, as far as since the city is a member, of 3CE, how is it represented when it comes to being on boards, policy boards, that whole dynamic too?
Thank you, Councilmember, for the question. The City of Grover Beach has a shared seat on both our policy board and operations board, and that means that the seat rotates between the City of Grover Beach, the City of Arroyo Grande, and the City of Pismo Beach. I believe that the City of Grover Beach is next in line for those seats on the policy board and operations board. That's a yearly rotation, so that would happen next year.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank
We
you very
appreciate
much.
your time coming out and giving us an update. Thank you. All right. We will now move on to public communications. Our meetings are designed to proceed in an organized and efficient manner to effectively conduct city business. The council welcomes and values public comments, which can be shared at the designated time from the podium using the microphone. The council requests that all comments be addressed to the council as a whole and that speakers refrain from directing individual comments at staff members. To maintain an orderly process, we kindly ask all attendees to refrain from creating disruptions during the meeting, interrupting speakers who are addressing the council, or impeding on the council's ability to conduct business. If you have to make comments to a neighbor, I'd encourage you to step outside or wait until after the meeting to ensure we're remaining respectful of everyone in the room and avoiding distractions. Should disruptions occur, the council may need to take certain measures, such as calling recess, clearing the chambers, or in rare circumstances, canceling the meeting. We greatly appreciate your understanding and cooperation in maintaining a productive environment that serves our entire community effectively. During this time, the council will allow public communication. Any member of the public may address the council for a period not to exceed 3 minutes total on any item of interest within the jurisdiction of the council. The council will listen to all communications. However, in compliance with the Brown Act, the council cannot act on or discuss items not on the agenda. So I will open general public comment, and I have Kelvin Koveduck, followed by Brenda Auer.
Hi, good evening. Should this be on?
Just speak loud.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
There you go. You're good.
Okay. I moved here about a month ago, but it's not my first time here. I lived here from 2010 to 2013, 3 houses down from where I lived before. But basically, I'm a block away from where Trinity is being built, and I see these 4-story buildings being risen. And I found out today that there's another 36 units proposed on Front Street. I'm 1 block away. That will affect my view and my neighbor's views and devalue our property, most likely. So although it hasn't been approved yet, I just wanted to make it known that many of my neighbors are upset with this and don't like it. And so since I'm back in the neighborhood, I just wanted to let everybody know that we think that 4 stories is excessive. It is zoned commercial, perhaps 1 or 2 stories, maybe looking at some commercial possibilities. Use your influence with the Planning Commission, perhaps. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you.
Is that as I love this area, I've lived on the Central Coast for 35 years, came back here because I love it. And I just hate to see it deteriorate, to high rises, and that, right on the railroad tracks there. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Brenda Auer, followed by Stacy Korsgaden.
Brenda Auer, Grover Beach residence, Grover Beach business owner. Sold Calvin his original home. Didn't sell him this one, or I might have warned him a little bit. But not only is his house going to lose his views, he's probably going to be left in the shadows of those buildings with no sun in the afternoon. Think about that for a minute. At your house, all of a sudden something was built up and you lost your evening sun. If you wanted that, you'd live by a mountain. He didn't choose that. I want to address everyone tonight and ask a favor that on next week's agenda that we put on a discussion about Central Coast Blue, including talking about rescinding the consolidated permit with Pismo. The community in South Grover Beach have no idea that Pismo's still planning to put their poop plant in the neighborhood. Let's have a talk about it. Let's have it here so it can be recorded so people can watch, so questions can be asked, so we can really get ahead of this and educate. I hear the natives are restless. Not time to go back to the streets with signs. Let's try and avoid that this time, okay? I was at the planning meeting on Tuesday, and I asked, where are we going to get for the water for this new 20 units they just approved? 5 stories, by the way. There's going to be quite a shadow there. And the answer was, we have done studies and we have enough water for the next few years. I say that's an unacceptable answer. Negligent for anyone to have voted that through without having a solid answer of what does that mean, few years. All I heard a year and a half, 2 years ago, we have no water, the sky is falling. And then we got some rain. Then we heard miracle rain, miracle rain. Now tonight, I think you're preparing us to jack our water rates up again, and the city doesn't want that. There's a lot of things going on that the city's asking you to take a look at. Listen to the community's voice. I don't have a strong enough one to do it by myself up here, but I do speak for a lot of people, so please pay attention. I want to speak on the agenda, but I want to say those rules I saw on Tuesday were what they call the pretzel effect. You twist the rules about visitor services and community services into whatever rule you want. They said that we've always said commercial on the bottom, residential on the top. Well, they said they were going to put a private gym on the second story. That's not considered anything visitors service private. We really need to take a look at what we're doing to our little town and what the community wants. In 2007, a report was done, and it was said we weren't growing because we had no jobs and no housing. Well, most of those new homes that are being built are being bought by people from out of the area.
Thank you for your comments,
So that's
Ms.
not
Auer.
helping Grover Beach.
Thank you for
Think
your
about
comments.
it, please.
Stacy Korsgaden.
Mayor and Council, thank you for all that you do for our city. I'm here today to discuss the new construction, the building that's going on in Grover Beach. I've lived here since 1986. I love Grover Beach, obviously, and was very, very excited about the development. I'm pro-development of Grover Beach. I'm very happy with Grand Avenue and the street development. I think it's awesome. I have to say, I was very surprised by the architectural design of the first building that I saw, and I don't know quite how to classify it. You know, it doesn't have the beach charm, it doesn't have the color, it doesn't have, I looked up what the different coastal designs were named, like Beach Cottage, Mediterranean, Contemporary Coastal, Cape Cod, Key West Style, Nautical, Craftsman, Miami Modern, and Gulf Coast. And I would say that what we have is very industrial looking. So I am disappointed on that, but I know that it's in the pipeline. The other construction units are probably in the pipeline as well. What I did see was the units towards Rockaway, and disclosure, I do have a property on Rockaway, and again, I'm pro-development. But when I saw that, it literally looked, I would say, Chicago style. I mean, it was like, how many people can we put in the units? Did not have any charm. So I'm concerned about parking, concerned about density, and concerned about the look of Grover Beach. You as the council are our voice. I know that it's gone through the approval process, but I hope you pull that and say, you know what else can we do? You guys are going to give us a lasting look in Grover Beach, and I want us all to look at it and say, you know, we're really proud of it. And I know that we can do it as a community. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to call me as a business owner. I'm always available, and I do talk to a lot of the community, and I speak for a lot of the community that they're afraid to come up here and speak, but they're not necessarily unhappy with the development, but they're unhappy with the look and the parking. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Catherine Sells.
Hi, Catherine Sells, and I live on Mentown. I don't think the buildings are beautiful. I mean, they're just plain buildings. But I think that some of us are forgetting that all the communities, all the beach communities in California are looking at this. They've look at Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach. The houses are right next to each other with, you know, you can whisper to your neighbor and tell a secret and no one else will hear it. This is what happens to beach communities. I thought Avila, when I first moved here, I thought Avila was the coolest place I'd ever seen. Well, now it's not. Now it's all cutesy and colorful and new. This is what happens in beach communities. Things change because everybody wants to live by the beach. And I am so happy that I've been able to live here for 23 years. And I just think we have to give in a little to development. It's the way things happen. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to speak on general public comment?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. You may change my notice to general comments. I have a few questions that have to do pretty much with water related and businesses. Peak and Astound and other future companies that are internet serving, what is their estimated bi-monthly water usage? How are their buildings metered? Do these companies require to use thousands of gallons of water daily to cool their servers? Does the city issue these types of companies water permits? What is the average water usage for commercial businesses? The city reports the average water usage for residential, but I've never seen a report for commercial. The city encourages ADUs to be built. However, are applicants being told that they will be penalized with double charges for meter, water, and South County passage throughs? That average bill alone is $223 before the charge of the higher tier rates for the water usage and the utility tax. We have been asking council to address these issues for about 2 years now. After listening to the fiber optic presentation, I started looking how much water is being used daily to cool sub-AI, AI, and servers. The reports claim that anywhere from 5,000 to millions of gallons of water is being used daily. In 2023, council said we needed CCB because we didn't have enough water with our only one water resource being Lake Lopez. We are now being told that we have enough water for a few years for these new developments. Are we going to be told different in the near future? I also would like to know, when do we expect the rate of water increase? As far as these new developments, it seems like the developers have found a loophole by saying that they're going to add 1 to 2 affordable housing units in the developments. This filtering for affordable housing is going to take years. But these condos that are going for high prices can also end up messing up the housing market and really it's not going to be filtered down for affordable housing. The state claims that people that can afford these condos by selling their old houses, where medium income can move into the houses that they just sold, and then eventually filter it down to low income. Sadly to say, it's never really going to be affordable housing for affordable living or incomes, because everybody knows that the housing market goes up. Yeah, it goes down, but not for long. But people still can't afford it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Ron Arnoldson. I really wasn't speak. I wanted to let you know that the lady that just spoke spent a couple hours last weekend cleaning up the bulb outs on our street, Newport. And we wasted $127,000 picking up crap from 4th Street from homeless people. That's a waste of money. Our money should be going to parks and our own community. You tend to have a real, I don't know, love to spend money for homeless people that don't pay taxes, but the people that pay taxes, you don't want to listen to them. The developers get your ear, we don't. It's a sad scenario. We don't have a sense of community here. Nobody really thinks about the community. They think about houses and building and how much we can fill our pockets with. I go back to 1961 when President Kennedy says, "Think not what you can do for your nation. Think what you can do. Think not what your nation can do for you. Think what you can do for your nation." And I say the same thing to you. Think not what your city can do for you. Think what you can do for your city. That's what you're here for.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to come up and speak on general public comment? Okay, is there anybody on the line?
Yes, we have Donna De La Rosa.
Oh.
Yes. Hi. Hope everyone's well. I would just like to request that we have a meeting placed on the next city agenda, the meeting for the, so we can discuss this water project that is continuing to go on, and it's in our backyard, literally, in my neighborhood. So if, I know you can't discuss it now, but I'd really like to see it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on the line?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay, all right, so I will now close general public comment, and we do not have any, oh, sorry, it was double-sided. There we go. Okay, now onto the consent agenda. The following routine items listed on the consent portion of the agenda are scheduled for consideration as a group. This is the minutes of the City Council meeting on Monday, August 25th, 2025, and the introduction and first reading of an ordinance to amend sections pertaining to appointments and vacancies for the Planning Commission and Parks, Recreation, and Beautification Commission, and a resolution modifying the Citizens Oversight Committee. So I will now open public comments on the consent agenda, and we have Brenda Auer.
Hello again. Good to see a really short consent agenda instead of like 11 items like last meeting. But I would like and plead for you to have an actual discussion instead of read only about item 4. It seems to me we have a problem with some of our oversight committees. If you don't know, go watch the last oversight committee. Watch it, it's taped. You'll see there's some difficulties. There have been no meetings. Monies haven't been addressed. Loans haven't been addressed. I would really like to even go back and talking about the Planning Commission. The people on the Planning Commission. We really need people that have an interest. Maybe they're people that are going to get one of those low-income houses. Who knows? But we need some people that don't have interest or relationships with the builders, shall we say. I think this is really something that needs to be discussed in depth We know there's some problems. Why would we just overlook it and say first reading, on to the next? I hate to stand up here and always have a complaint. And I don't even want to use that word. It's pretty much a you know what. But it's been a few months, and I've given all the council a great benefit of the doubt. And now I'm asking you, please step up and look out for the community and what they want, not what the builders want. When we're hearing that we have this density we have to build, well, we've done our share. Grover Beach won.
Make
Matt
sure it's
won.
on the consent agenda, Ms. Hauer.
Okay. Well, back to the planning department. It's real important we have people that will step up for us there. And this is an absolute important item to go over. And if y'all don't know what the problems are, please take it off the agenda, move it to have an actual discussion about it for all of our sakes. If you don't stand for something, you're going to fall for anything. Thank you. I pray for you all.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else wish to come up and speak on the consent agenda? No? Is there anybody on the line? Okay, I will now close public comments on the consent agenda. I absolutely agree that number 4 is an important item, and there's a way that these public hearings work. It can either work where it's on the consent agenda and then it's brought back for the full discussion, which Mr. Lamelli explained last meeting, or you can do it vice versa. This gives us a little bit more time to read the item and really get our teeth in it and bring back some ideas. We can discuss it out at my office hours, etc. So I agree that it is an important item, but it's on the consent agenda. So does anybody have any questions or would like to pull any items for discussion? Okay, if I can have a motion.
Yeah, I mean, I echo you. We'll get to discuss that with the second reading, and that gives us time to collect input from community members and do our own research.
Absolutely. Okay. Do you have, yeah.
I just want to thank this for coming back to our agenda, because I remember several months ago we had a lengthy discussion about our commissions, and this is one of the things we asked for, is to bring this back to City Council and let's fix some of the concerns that members brought forward about 2 of our commissions at that time, and I am looking forward to robust discussions. So thank you for bringing this back to us.
Did that sound like a motion to approve it?
Sure.
Okay. We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McCrory Driscoll?
Yes.
Councilmember Tugwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Robert?
Yes.
Mayor D.
Yes. All right, that passes. Thank you so much. We will go on. We do not have any public hearings. We will now move on to our regular business. Item 5 is the resolution to authorize execution and delivery of wastewater infrastructure financing and installment purchase contract. I will pass it over to Assistant City Manager Erickson for the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I'm going to introduce Albert Pesce, who is our consultant on this bond issuance, and will be making the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Erickson. My name is Albert Pesce. I'm a municipal advisor, and I've actually been assisting the city for about 20 years now. We do have a presentation that we'd like to go through for you. Just some background. So in late June, we began discussion of how to finance wastewater improvements that were required by the city. We had a call with Ms. Erickson and Greg Ray, and we decided that we should be looking at a private placement, or also known as a direct placement. And we had that discussion with the full finance team, and 2 members are actually here tonight, right before the 4th of July. So we decided that a 20-year direct placement or private placement would be the way to go, the most cost-effective, and we'll discuss that later in the presentation. And that would be payable from the wastewater enterprise. So in late July, the council adopted a reimbursement resolution that would allow you to reimburse cost 60 days prior to the adoption of that resolution for the wastewater treatment project. And we were hired on a contingent basis. So what does contingent means? That we don't get compensated unless there is a sale of the bonds and it closes. My firm was hired, Pesce & Associates, and also we have Renee Vancho from Piper Sandler, who is here as the placement agent. And we have bond counsel, we have Cyrus Tarabi, who assists Albert Reyes from QTAC Rock. So on July the 30th, Piper sent out a term sheet to prospective banks to bid on the private placement, and I'd like to turn it over to Renee to discuss that.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here today. So as Albert mentioned, we, Piper Sandler, served as placement agent for this transaction. And so in late July, we did put together a term sheet and sent it out to a list of 28 banks. And the term sheet included a summary of the transaction, the amortization, the interest payment dates. It had a summary of the rate study. It included the most recent ACFR, the budget, capital improvement program. It included all the information we suspected the banks would want to see. And based on that, they had about 2 weeks to go through their credit approval internally, and we received bids from 6 different banks, which is a healthy amount of bids. Sometimes we're crossing our fingers for just 3, and we had a lot of interest for this one. So we compared all of the bids that we received, and the winning bidder was Webster Bank. So on this slide, this is a summary of the bids that we did receive. Webster Bank is highlighted in blue. It was the lowest bid by almost 25 basis points compared to the next lowest. But not only did they have the lowest rate, they also had some of the most attractive terms as well. We were able to lock in the rate, so some of them came in with rates that could have changed before we closed the transaction in late September. They did not. They said we would lock it until the transaction closes. They had the lowest bank counsel fee. They also had a very attractive optional redemption feature. So this summarizes just a little bit more of that optional redemption. So in 3 years, the transaction actually can be refunded if rates are attractive enough for savings at a premium of 2%, but that it declines to par after a certain amount of years where there is no premium and the transaction can be refinanced, much like a home mortgage. Again, the rate came in about 25 basis points lower compared to the next lowest bid. So we did accept that one, and the rate is locked at a 4.425. And I will mention that we also did an analysis of a public offering, and this one, just based on the dynamics of this transaction, the amount of the par, a private placement did come in with a much more attractive rate in comparison for the city.
Good evening, Cyrus Tarabi with QTAC Rock, the city's bond counsel. So just a bit more on some of the legal provisions that the bank has agreed to with the city. So I think as Albert mentioned, this obligation will solely be payable from revenues of the wastewater enterprise. There's no general fund money or water enterprise fund or other enterprise funds of the city at stake here. There is a covenant to set the wastewater rates and charges each year at 120% of the debt service. That's kind of a standard covenant that you see in both public and private deals. And it's, just to be clear, it's a covenant to set rates at the beginning of the fiscal year. It's not a covenant, you know, that if something happens in the middle of the fiscal year or at the end of the fiscal year where you didn't actually get to 120, that's not a default. There's a procedure that you would undertake at that point to get a consultant on board, basically to look at the rates and see if there's something else that the city should be doing. But the covenant is to set rates, not to collect rates. I'm assuming this is the advance, yeah. So terms of the bid, Webster Bank was able to kind of work with its internal credit approval in the city so that if the approval that Webster Bank provided was lower than the construction bids, which came in, I think, a couple weeks later, Webster Bank was going to be flexible enough to increase the principal amount that they would lend. And then another term, so there's a default rate under the documents if the city defaults. An event that's not a default but could, you know, occur is this is a tax exempt obligation, and if the bond or the installment purchase contract in this case were to become taxable, there would be a higher rate to be paid so that kind of Webster Bank gets the benefit of its bargain in terms of expecting a tax exempt rate and then having to pay interest on the, to pay a tax on the interest that it receives from the city. So that taxable rate would go up from the 4.425 that was mentioned earlier to 6%. And then the default rate, if there were ever a city default, would be on top of that. So either up to 7.425 or 9%. And I think I will turn it over to Albert for the last slide here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And as Cyrus said, there was provisions built into the term sheet. So if the project fund or the construction bids came in higher than were expected, that we could increase the borrowing amount. So the construction cost that came in on the 28th, along with the contingencies and additional planning, were $4.8 million. So we approved a borrowing amount of up to $5 million. So based off the updated construction costs, we're estimating a par amount of $4,940,000. The estimated debt service is $380,000 a year, roughly, and then the total debt service would be about $7.5 million. So the estimated cost of issuance, that's paying for the bond costs, which would include bank counsel fees that Renee described earlier, are about $138,000, which is 2.8% of the par value of the bonds, and that's actually below the 3 to 5% that you see for similar private placements. So we were very happy about that. And Renee did mention that we looked at a public sale. So what is a public sale? That's where you actually put together an official statement. You go and get a rating. You pay for bond counsel, not just bond counsel fees, but disclosure counsel. And then you have ongoing continuing disclosure requirements. We were able to avoid a lot of that by doing this direct placement, or also known as a private placement. So with that, the next steps, should the council desire to move forward, would be approval of the legal documents. We would finalize the numbers in a couple of days, and then sometime between the 15th and 17th, Albert Reyes and Cyrus would be sending over the legal documents to the city for signature. And then on the 24th, we would close the issue, and then the funds of $4.8 million would be wired to the city's bank, and then you could proceed with your project and also probably accept the construction bids and sign that, I think it's a few days later in September. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions, and my colleagues as well.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I almost fainted when I saw 4.4%. I feel like that's really low. Is there anything special we did to get that kind of rate?
Well, it's a tax-exempt rate, so the bank is not going to have to pay taxes on it, and it's also, you get the benefit of it being bank qualified, which means you're not expected to issue more than $10 million in tax-exempt bonds this calendar year, and so they actually get a benefit from that where they can deduct the carrying cost for that. And also, Grover Beach has got a great name. There is a 2020 water bond, which was actually very similar. This team worked on it. And I think we did a good job of discussing it, and those are my thoughts about it.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll open it up for questions.
My question is similar, but a follow-up. You mentioned that there was quite a few bidders, and if you had any sense of why you got more bids than you expected. Was that a reflection of the economy, of the business of Grover Beach, of your great job?
I think it's multi-pronged. I think it's the strong name of the city. Obviously, the banks do their own credit work, and so they look at the credit of the city, and it's a very strong credit. If we were to publicly offer and we're going to have this official statement, we were assuming the city would have a solid A rating. So that's part of it. It could be just also the time of year. It could be the dynamics of the market. Sometimes banks are just not willing to lend, and sometimes they are. So I think that's also part of it too. And just the 20-year amortization also helps. If you go any higher than that, you're going to see a swift drop of banks willing to lend. So the 20-year mark was a good metric to have as well.
Mayor Pro Tem, questions?
Just a little confused on the taxable part of the loan. At some point, could this be classified as taxable? I mean, what makes that who makes that decision?
So there's two things. The city has covenanted in the agreement to, take care of all of its obligations to keep the bonds, the installment purchase contract, tax exempt. So that would be things like spending the money within a 3 to 5 year period, or at least having a reasonable expectation to do so. And then spending the money on public projects, so the sewer pipelines and those types of things, and not kind of projects that would put you into the private use type of realm. The other thing that could happen, and folks were worried about that happening with the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, was that Congress could change the laws. So that could at some point happen, presumably. It's theoretically possible. It doesn't appear that that'll happen in the next few years, given the tax provisions in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act through, I think, 2030, most of them. But that's the idea, is that the city could do something, probably unlikely. You'd communicate with this team, and we'd figure out a way to keep the city on the right path, and then no accounting for what Congress could do. But currently, there's no expectation that Congress is going to do anything that would change the tax exemption.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it.
Some questions to my left. Councilmember McCrory Driscoll.
I have one. I was not familiar with Webster Bank, and I'm just kind of wondering if you can give us a little bit of insight into the type of bank they are, their experience with funding these types of bond measures, et cetera.
So they are Connecticut-based. They participate in this type of transaction for issuers across the country. I unfortunately don't have a ton of information on them, but I can follow up if you'd like me to. They're part of we have an internal placement group at Piper Sandler, and so we have this long list of banks. They're a different list for different types of projects. So this was that we sent out 28 banks. And they were on this list because they are a bank that participates quite often, and they do good credit work, and they have very attractive bids. So that is why they were included on this list.
So they were on your list for those particular reasons?
Yes.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Due to this being a direct and private placement method versus the public that's being recommended, so who's actually on the bond team when it comes to external people, city staff, and who's the people who could speak to the market, since I can't and I won't?
Well, so the bond team consists of your municipal advisor, my firm, Pesce & Associates, and then you have bond counsel, QTAC Rock, and then you have Piper Sandler, who is a placement agent, but is also an underwriter. And on our bond team here, that would be Kristen, Greg, and Matt, and obviously Nick. So that's what we consider the bond team. And we talk several times a year, and certainly more when we're doing a financing.
Okay, and then this might actually be more of our side of things, is when it comes to the progress of this bond, because it's not, for instance, a voter-approved bond that has its own oversight committee that's reported to us annually that way. How is this information of the progress of the bond over all these years reported to the council? Since it's for us, it's different on our finances, and it makes it clear where this is at. Since it's a different way of how things are done.
Yeah, thank you for that. It'll be included in all of our normal financial reporting, including quarterly reports, mid-year reports, year-end reports, and it will also be included in our ACFR as we report on the wastewater fund in general. As you saw, it's just under $400,000 a year in debt service, which we will continue to pay over the amortization schedule. We do anticipate, however, expenditures will come to a conclusion much quicker than that, as most of this funding will go to our first sewer project that is planned.
And for instance, just because this will be a newer part too within the city's finances, could, for instance, mid-year then proper budget time, that it be highlighted just
Absolutely.
So that it's not lost within all the different financial reportings?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
May I add one thing? You had a question about the ratings, I remember at a council meeting. So these don't have ratings, as Renee discussed. So the water bonds and the wastewater bonds don't have ratings, so we save money with that. But the city does have outstanding bond ratings on its general obligation bonds. So currently those are a AA by Standard & Poor's, which Actually puts it on par with the federal government in terms of your rating. And then you have redevelopment bonds that are rated A minus. So those are your outstanding ratings. I just wanted to point that out. I recall you had a question previous meeting.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I will now open public comment on this item. I do not have any speaker slips. Does anybody wish to come up and speak on this item? Seeing nobody come forward, is there anybody on the line? Okay, well then I will now close public comment and I will bring it back to the council for deliberation. If anybody wants to make a motion and comment, or go ahead.
I can just make the motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery by the city of installing purchases contract and conveyance agreement for wastewater infrastructure financing along with other necessary documents and related actions for the $5 million private placement financing.
Gorgeous. We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? No? Okay, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Councilmember Tuggle?
Yes.
Councilmember McCory Driscoll?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Robert?
Yes.
Mayor D.
Yes. All right, thank you so much for being here and for presenting, all three of you. I appreciate it. Before we move on to our last regular business item, does anybody need a break for the restroom at all or anything? No? Should in case? Okay, let's just take a quick 10-minute break. We'll be back at 7:15. 5 sign? I don't know. We'll do 10 minutes. 7:15, we'll be back. Start now? Okay, cool. All right, thank you. All right. Thank you for your patience for that little break. Okay, we will now move on to item number 6, the water system update. And I will call on City Manager Bronson and Public Works Director, City Engineer Ray for the PowerPoint presentation.
Well, thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council. Is my microphone on?
Are we on? Hello? Would you like me to restart? Go ahead.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor and Council members. I just want to take a moment and acknowledge the tremendous work that was done in the preceding item for our sewer bond. We went from having a sewer rate structure adopted by your council in June to a sewer bond agreement adopted by your council in September with a project that will be coming to your council in 2 weeks and pending your award of contract, construction beginning in about a month. So that fulfills our commitment towards addressing our sewer needs for many years to come. And at this point, that turns the page from focusing on sewer as we have over the last 9 months to then turning our attention to water and spending considerable time, effort, and resource on addressing our water needs at the city. This is the beginning of a multi-year process to address water needs now and water needs in the future. I'm joined here by our Public Works Director, Greg Ray, who will be providing part of the presentation this evening. Our intent tonight is to update the council, provide a status on our water infrastructure needs, water supply conditions, water enterprise fund financial issues, and just set the stage for what is the beginning of a journey over the next 2 years in our water system. We are going to provide information about a water supply resiliency study, and our one requested area of direction is to get your council's review, input, and hopeful concurrence into a draft scope of work for this water supply resiliency study that we can begin as the first step in this journey coming forward. And I will note that all this work is consistent with your council's top priority of water and sewer infrastructure and needed resources. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Mr. Ray, who will highlight our infrastructure needs and supply conditions.
Thank you, City Manager Bronson, and good evening, Council and Honorable Mayor. So first of all, just a quick overview of the water system, just so you have an idea of the scale of what we're talking about. There's actually 48 miles of water mains in the city, over 1,600 water valves, over 440 fire hydrants. And that's just, there's more detail in the staff report on some other components, but just to give you an idea of the scope of it, it's a fairly large system, and predominantly the system's over 40 years old, but there's a number of components that are up in their 60s now. In the fiscal year 24-25, we had 31 unexpected service interruptions, and as of this evening, it's now 32. We had another one today. So we're having unexpected service interruptions as a result of, like you can see here, water line leaks and breaks that we'd have not anticipated to occur. Good. And so I want to talk about our the impacts of our system reliability. Historically, major system maintenance in the city has been deferred due to lack of funding, even with the water rates we had in place. When I started here many years ago, it was really just replacements and upgrades only after components failed. There was just not enough money to chase after and upgrade the system. In 2010, a water master plan was developed, and typical component of a water master plan is a capital improvement plan. You have the consultant go through and evaluate your system with the assistance of city staff, and you come up with a CIP. That's usually a 10-year CIP. Because of funding at the time, time was extended to 20 years to try to soften the impact on the water rates. And again, in 2019, we hired another consulting firm to update the water master plan, and also had a 10-year CIP, which was again spread out over 20 years to soften the impact on water rates. We were fortunate enough, and I think it was mentioned earlier in 2020, to receive a water revenue bond, And that allowed us to take a number of the capital improvement program recommendations off the list and get them done. But we're still left with significant needs. Just an idea of some of the projects that are in the CIP that are currently delayed, with the exception of one, and we're doing some power electrical upgrades at our well site to improve safety and address some really aging infrastructure there. But some of the things that, there's a description in the staff report on some details of these, but if you have questions, I can answer them. But basically, installation of water main zone valves. Those are valves to allow us to, when there is a main break, to isolate that part of the system and impact less customers. For whatever reason, when the water system was built, back in the 60s and early 70s, there were very few valves put in. Even though 1,600 seems like a lot, it's really, there's not many valves with 48 miles of mains. We have some well facility improvements. We mentioned one of them, I just mentioned, that is going to occur, but there's a significant number of other well facility improvements that need to happen. The 16th Street Booster Station is in dire need of pump upgrades and equipment upgrades. We have a water meter replacement program that is falling behind. We have meters that are well over 10 years old in the ground, and the old meters stop registering effectively, so you start losing revenue, which is not good. We have a recommended automated meter reading system in the CIP that would help us replace a bunch of meters, but also be able to detect leaks and protect property owners from excessive water bills. We have a number of water mains that need to be upsized. The old nitrate plant needs to be decommissioned, and we have some significant reservoir maintenance work that needs to occur. Jumping over from facility needs to our water supply conditions, I'm sure the council's aware that we have two sources of water. We have Lopez Lake, which is our surface water supply, and we have groundwater from the Santa Maria groundwater basin. Fortunately for us, we have had a couple years of above normal rainfall. This last water year was just below average, but close. And I think as a result, we're in pretty good shape. Lopez Lake's 85, I think the last report was actually it's dropped to 84% full, but that's fairly full. Our groundwater levels are coming in as basically sufficient, and we're not seeing any declines as a result of the current pumping regime. So with that in mind, I think we could survive a year or two of drought. We have sufficient water supply available over the next few years to meet our projected demand. But I say that there's always the other shoe. The current water supply could be insufficient to serve existing customers during extended periods of drought. And if that occurs again, we all went through that, back in early 2020s, that could result in significant water use cutbacks. With incremental population growth, which is expected, I would expect that long-term water demand will eventually exceed our available supply, and that's even during normal rainfall years. We do not currently have any supply buffer available to address drought or water system emergencies, and no supply buffer policy in place. There's also pending federal litigation against the county's operation of Lopez Lake, in particular downstream releases related to endangered steelhead trout. And most likely that's going to result in increased downstream releases, and releasing more water from the lake means less water for the lake customers, which at Grover Beach is one. Also with building permits, as you've seen, we've had an uptick in development. These projects that are approved but not yet built will result in additional water demand. So staff has continued to work on water supply, and not only monitoring but working on water supply concepts and ideas. A couple things that are currently in the works are we're working on the feasibility of a water supply development impact fee. That's a fee that where developers would pay their fair share of an additional water supply source. We're also working on a concept for an ordinance that would implement potentially a development stay if we did enter a condition of long-term drought. And then what City Manager Bronson mentioned earlier is tonight we'd like the council's concurrence on a scope of work for a water supply resiliency study. I'll kind of give you some idea of what that study is about. The study would be an in-depth evaluation of our supply resiliency and risks compared to our estimated demands, validating some of the information that staff has been preparing and analyzing over the years. It would be analysis of available alternative water supply sources with recommendations on the most feasible sources for the council to consider, and then recommendations on the timing and scale of a future water supply source. The draft scope that staff has put together for council consideration, the scope would include a public information and engagement program, which would allow for community involvement. It would, as I mentioned earlier, it would include an analysis of our water supply and demand, and recommended water supply buffer amount, and a recommended policy for a water supply buffer. It would include a detailed cost-benefit analysis of a number of water supply alternatives that have been considered historically, but conditions may have changed. That includes conservation, desalination, Lopez Lake spillway modifications, purchase of state water potentially, recycled water, stormwater retention, and any other emerging water supply solutions that may be out there. Ultimately, the study would result in a short list of water supply alternatives, which would be recommended for more in-depth research, of course with council's approval. Then moving on to preliminary design, cost estimates, and an estimated schedule for the selective alternatives. So we have an idea of what we're looking at and how much it would cost, of course, up front. Also potentially peer review, value engineering, and recommendations on designs that are already existing for water supply alternatives. And then ultimately a final report and recommendation to the council identifying the most cost-effective and feasible water supply alternative. And then the last point would be recommendations on future actions related to the recommended alternative. So again, staff is seeking council input and direction on that draft scope of work prior to releasing the RFP. The study would be led by the Public Works Department with involvement from both the Community Development Department and the City Manager's Office. We already included funding for this study in the current adopted budget. And the proposed schedule for this work would be the RFP would be released this month. Consultant agreement would be brought to the council for approval by the end of 2025. And then we would expect the study report to be finalized and brought to the council by July of 26.
Back to me, and I'll just cover a few final points before we close the presentation. Looking at the financials with the Water Enterprise Fund, one of our two enterprise funds along with the Wastewater Fund, the fund has just over $4.5 million in an annual amount. We do have a budgeted deficit of about $145,000 because of our inability to fully cover our needs and costs with our current rate structure. So we are having to dip into reserves to help cover that budgeted gap. Our water rates go back a number of years. So the current rate structure we have was adopted by the council in May of 2021. The council did adopt a water and wastewater rate structure in December 2023. In May of 2024, the council reverted the water rates back to the previous 2021 rate structure. And then Measure D24 passed last fall, which set the rates at the 2021 levels, and the council would need to commission a new Prop 218 process to consider increasing water rates beyond the 2021 levels. So our current rate structure does expire after this fiscal year, and there is no increase beyond that is programmed. So the rates would be flat after June 30th, 2026. Our current rate structure does not fund the increased operations and maintenance costs that we see in the water system, nor does it provide funding for necessary capital projects, as Mr. Ray mentioned a moment ago. Staff's intent is to bring forward and initiate a rate study after the conclusion of a water supply resiliency study. So that would be roughly 1 year out, and then bringing a rate study to the council sometime in next fiscal year 26, 27, so about 1.5 years plus out at this particular point. And when we look at the rate structure and look at a rate study in the future, we have a number of different considerations that we'll be looking at as staff. Of course, infrastructure needs, as Mr. Ray mentioned, we have a substantial list of needs for a system that's bordering on 60 years old. Just as we had in the sewer system, we have significant infrastructure needs we must take care of going forward. We also have water supply needs, and how those factor into our overall water fund budget will be part of the rate study as well. Lopez Lake litigation impacts will be part of this, and Mr. Lamelli can speak more to this as our Chief Legal Officer, but as Mr. Ray mentioned, the outcome of the litigation will likely lead to less reliable Lopez Lake water and much more expensive Lopez Lake water. And that's water we have today. That's not new water. That's water that's in our system for our residents today. So how that gets factored in is part of a future rate study process as well. We also will be having to look at the whole tiered rate structure. There's been some recent court cases that indicate that tiered rate structure that we've been using for the last 4 years may have some challenges, I'll just say that. And so we'll have to look very carefully at the methodology and to see if we can even use tiered rates going forward in a future rate plan. And if that means we have to do away with tiered rates, then the higher bills paid by higher users would have to be rebalanced across the entire system. So users at the low end may have to pay even more to help balance out what the costs are that right now are being borne by the higher rate users. So much more to that as we go forward. And then as part of that, we will be looking at the multifamily billing issue, which your council and council beforehand has identified for us. And we understand the concerns and equity challenges with multifamily metering and the city's long-standing practice of having 1 meter per property, but just to know that changing that practice, changing that policy could be a very substantial, very expensive effort that would involve substantial workload on a staff level as well. It's something that we can certainly do, but it would have a significant effect on the water fund financials, and we would recommend thus looking at that in the context of a future rate study to look at all the different factors and forces and levers affecting water rates for down the road. So for tonight, again, we are providing this information to the council to set the stage with what we are looking at in terms of our water system, from infrastructure to supply to finances. We are seeking direction from your council on the water resiliency study scope so that we can get that off and running. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the start of a multi-year process. This is a very different process than we looked at water issues in 2024, 2023, and beyond. We're starting a multi-year effort to address water issues in a thoughtful, comprehensive way with engagement with the community and deliberation by your council at multiple times. And this process, we believe, begins with the water resiliency study as the first step. So with that, we're glad to take your questions and comments.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I'll start to my left. Councilmember McCrory Driscoll.
Wow, I have a lot of questions. I'm going to hold off on one, but I'm very curious about the nitrate plant. But I'll get to learn about that offline. But could you briefly explain what you're referring to when you make the statement about a water supply buffer?
So much like a financial budget, for example, our city's general fund, the council has a policy related to the general fund of how much money you have in reserves. And the reason for that policy is the potential for swings in the economy and changes in income that the city receives to the general fund. So you're protecting yourself against risk and the resiliency of your general fund revenue. Well, it works the same for a water fund, essentially. You're looking at the risk to that water supply coming to you that you've kind of taken for granted over years. What are the risks, for example, the lawsuit against Lopez? And then trying to figure out how much do you need in reserve to be able to weather those without significant
Okay.
impacts.
So it's a financial supply.
But no, it's actual water
Water,
supply.
okay.
It's like an actual water supply, but it's just a good analogy is a kind of a financial reserve account. So you're looking at a water supply reserve account policy.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And thank you, Matt. I didn't think I was going to hear it, but you touched on it. Public outreach, making sure that that's part of it. The court cases, I had a question. Are those state or federal?
In terms of Lopez Lake litigation, that's
no,
federal?
about the
Tiered rates?
changes.
That's
Tiered
state.
rates.
That's coming out of the California Supreme Court.
Okay. And do we have any idea when we should hear about that?
So for clarification, that is still working its way through a couple of appeals courts.
Oh, okay.
So it is likely going to head to the California Supreme Court in order to be able to make a determination. But right now, what the basic understanding is that the tiered rates are acceptable as long as the rate study effectively encompasses the reasonability of those rates in terms of being able to demonstrate that there's an actual cost associated with increased use. So it's basically just a burden right now currently that's being placed on the rate studies, which is causing the cities to have to actually go out and do basically increased cost studies to ensure that the costs are associated with it.
Okay. I'll stop there for questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Oh, yeah, plenty of questions. And actually, the first one is just to help people not be confused is since when residents will hear that there's 48 miles of water mains, and then they're like, isn't our city only a few miles? Could you explain the math on that one? Since if I try to explain it to someone, that'd probably not sound as good as you.
There's literally a water main in almost every street in the city. So if you think about, sure, we're only a couple miles long and a couple miles wide, multiply that by every single street, north, south, and east and west. And there you go, 48 miles.
Perfect, thank you. And then because of its possible impacts of the timing of when such a resiliency study should occur, what is the status of the investigation into what caused Lopez Lake's water system contamination? Because our city did have a boil water order, earlier this year. Any update?
Yeah, so I sit on the County Zone 3, a technical advisory committee. The last report we received from the county was that there was no source of the contamination was ever identified. Even the state came in and audited the county's Lopez water system. They did site visits throughout, and they could not identify any particular source. What they did find were some cases where they thought, potentially there could be some contamination caused, and so they recommended a number of upgraded maintenance practices as well as added some maintenance projects into the county's capital improvement program for Lopez Lake pipeline. So at this point in time, improved maintenance processes, but no known source for the contamination.
Thank you. And for that, as far as the different actions that the county government, has to make, or is being recommended at least, to any sense of the timeline of what that all looks like?
Yeah, it'll take years. There's a number of improvements that need to be made, and a number of maintenance upgrades that have to happen. And the capital improvement program for the county is already set in stone each year. The city actually reviews that budget and approves it. So it'll take quite a while to get that into the budget and get that work done.
Okay. And as far as the scope for this study, because water contamination issues apparently can be an issue for our city based off of that incident, how does this study intersect with looking at water contamination issues outside of the normal kind of practices that the city already has to go through with other regulatory entities?
Well, I think the point of the study is to consider the risks to the system and the likelihood of those risks occurring. So, if there's a risk that means you lose a water supply for a couple days, and it's likely to happen once every 20 years, you probably aren't going to spend a lot of time focusing on a water supply buffer to address that risk. But that's the consultant's job, is to look at that and put some real numbers on it. They'll look at the age of the county's system, they'll look at the age of our system, and the interaction between our two systems and the various things that take place, and determine is contamination a high risk for us, and how often is it likely to happen?
Thank you. And when it comes to the water supply development impact fee DIF that was mentioned, so does this study that's being proposed meet the legally required aspects of the Nexus study that's required for those, or would that have to be a separate study in itself?
That would be a separate study.
And for that kind of study, could that happen simultaneously or earlier than this one being completed, or is there a reason why that should be after this one that's being proposed to be
It
completed?
could happen before, simultaneously after. The two aren't necessarily married to each other, although remember that the water supply and resiliency study is the study that ultimately hopefully defines our need and the scope of an alternative water supply source to add to our system. So without knowing sort of the project and the size of the project and the cost of the project, developing a development impact fee becomes a little more difficult. It's still possible, but it becomes more difficult to do.
So doing this resiliency study could complement information for a Nexus study, is that what
Correct.
you're saying? Okay.
That's more likely the path we would take.
Understood. And so how would this study, or would it have to be added to the scope specifically, work in identifying potential external funding such as grants to align with the different recommendations of things to fund that to meet all the different system needs, and just how is that integrated, or would that have to be specifically integrated into the scope just to make sure that, so for instance, if it recommends X, Y, and Z, it's like, yep, here's this state or federal funding source that the city might be competitive for, since the people who do these studies tend to know all these different factors and where we might lie.
Yeah, I think pending council's deliberation on this, that would be a great idea to consider adding into the scope of work.
Okay, thank you. And in one of the areas that's come up in previous years, but it might tie into this or might not, is for our city's urban water management plan. I remember that was coming up that had to be updated in kind of more recent times, when it was brought up last year. And where is that added? How does that intersect that information with this study too?
So that study gets updated every 5 years. So I've already begun the process of putting out RFPs to update the urban water management plan. Urban water management plan is, and you have to think about it as it's a response to a number of questions that the state asks about your water system. It's not the greatest water supply resiliency planning tool or supply and demand tool because of the manner in which you calculate supply and demand within the urban water management plan. I think it skews the numbers a bit. So I would say the goal of the update is to meet the state mandated requirements and not necessarily to really provide a lot of information for the supply and resiliency study.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you right, then basically it meets that meets the mandates, which obviously isn't purely localized stuff in its intention for our city, but the information. But the information from it, would that information be helpful for the consultants who would do this study versus replicating more information that's already going to be done by others doing that? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It could. I mean, it relies on some of the same information, at least for supply, initial supply and demand estimates. I think, when we're talking about the resiliency study, we're looking way more in depth at the supply and demand, whereas the urban water management plan just looks at them very plainly. How much water do you have today? How much demand do you have today?
And just to add to that, a big part of the urban water management plan really deals with what to do when you have supply conditions that are limited. So it defines the different reductions and limitations and various trigger points. So that's a big part of what the urban water management plan is. How do you manage with water reductions, which is a part of the water supply study we're looking at, but it's one small piece of a much bigger puzzle about what alternatives and sources we could be looking at.
And because the scope that's being proposed has conservation and those trigger points you're talking about, the urban water management plan, that's why I'm trying to see how these are intersecting, because if, for instance, one comes before the other is finished, that if the management plan's done, then can we adjust the trigger points based off of new information from the resiliency study, those kind of things. That's what I'm trying to figure out on the timing of all this.
It's interesting. Again, so what City Manager Bronson's referring to is the water shortage contingency plan, and we enacted that a number of years ago, where we had mandatory water use reductions. Those are pretty well defined by the state. You don't have a lot of wiggle room anymore. Used to be that you could sort of self-define and use local data to determine that, but now it's pretty well, the state sets it out and you just follow along. So sure, that conservation and those steps could play into looking at how much water supply do we need, how much of a water supply buffer do we need. And I think they certainly can have some interplay there, but by and large, again, you're looking for a much more in-depth study from our consultant for the resiliency study.
Yep. Thank you. And then when it comes to kind of water conservation again, for that piece of it, is intention of the scope to look into things for instance, our city has current water conservation programs, like for instance, getting rid of your grass, the grass for cash part, different things like that. Is it looking on how we could improve or modify those ones too, and maybe look at other California cities that basically live under the same rules and regulations we do, of different things they're looking at so we might be able to leverage other kind of more long-term incentive programs?
Yes, and I think, what you're looking for is to see if what kind of plainly, is there any meat left on the bones? I mean, we're already one of the lowest water using per capita cities in California. So how much more demand reduction is possible through conservation? But like you say, what's out there? What are we not doing from a conservation effort, and how much value would that provide to us?
Okay. Well, and then kind of on the conservation meets demand part, but on the front end is, I remember last year, the city council, we were talking about in our development code, and I asked about as far as what kind of different incentivizing water efficiency models like net zero water systems could be looked into. And at that time, I believe it was mentioned that the California Building Code was coming up again, where they'd have potential revisions related to water efficiency. Do we know where the California Building Code's at when it comes to these?
We have to defer to Committee Development Director Martin to speak to that.
I noticed you were here. Can you? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer it. The state released the new code cycle in June, July of this year, and it will be adopted here locally in the next couple of city council meetings, and then we will forward that to the state, and it'll take effect in January 1 of 2026. So as far as additional water conservation programs or incentives in either the residential code, the plumbing code, even an energy code, there isn't anything notable that makes any drastic changes from the previous code cycle. Part of that is a result of Assembly Bill 130. It has significantly limited any changes to residential code as part of the building code cycle update this year through 2031. So unfortunately, we're unable to make certain changes to our local codes, as well as we won't see any additional potentially water conservation program changes as part of the building code cycle, because it would have an effect on the residential code, which AB 130 has prohibited through 2031.
And for Assembly Bill 130, which year was that one adopted in?
So that was brought forward in January, and it was signed and effected immediately on June 30th of 2025. So they gave us just a couple of months to identify any amendments that we could potentially bring forward, but that also would require approval from potentially the Energy Commission as well as State Buildings Commission, and so there just wasn't enough time for us to consider any kind of amendment that would be above and beyond state building code standards.
Okay, I mean, and I bring this up since when I brought up the issue last year, and that's why even within this study, how we could look at doing things before they get preempted or like this is, when I brought up last year that if we did integrate those kind of things in development code, then it would actually not be preempted by this. But since this is in law now, it would be preempted if we tried anything this year versus last year.
Had certain amendments been presented and approved by council, yes, they would have been able to have been rolled over into the new code. So any amendments or code changes prior to September 30th of 2025 would be allowed to be presented to the state for this code cycle update.
So right now, basically, which I understand the likelihoods at this point, not really there, that we'd have a little bit over a month to even look into this, but I'm not sure. I understand the practicality of that not happening. That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example of the state preempting local governments, and ultimately there are conservation programs we do. We have a very active, robust conservation effort, and what's currently being built are the most water efficient units in the state compared to what was built 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and there's other efforts that we can look at. We'll certainly look at that as part of the study, but in terms of the building codes themselves, the state, as Mr. Lamelli will talk about with housing mandates, has come in and preempted local governments from doing more in this particular time frame in the interest of getting more housing done now.
And so based off of that part, that because what I'm really trying to get at too, as far as having the demand reduced on the front end by more efficient systems, which yes, I understand for anyone who would do any commercial or residential development, costs them a little bit more upfront too, but it saves us from having more demand added to the system, at least to the maximum amount possible. So even though we couldn't do this in our development code, for instance, because of what you're talking about, are we still able to look into things in the study on programs that incentivizes these things, where it's not the mandates but incentivizing it, or how deep does this preemption go?
I think that would be up to your council, whether or not you would like us to look into additional incentive programs. I think it's just also really important to note that the building code doesn't stop at just residential code. There's plumbing code, there's energy code, there's the green building code. All of those codes together offer fairly restrictive conservation standards for new buildings. So it's our existing homes that likely require more of the retrofit effort to see any level of return on water savings, and that's where our previous investigations into this topic led us to not fully expand upon it, but led us to kind of understand that it would be more of a cost burden on existing homeowners than it would be on a developer doing a brand new multi-family structure. So I guess what I'm saying is that the cost burden to the individual homeowner would be greater than a developer who's already required to meet those very, very stringent conservation measures under plumbing code, energy code, Cal Green code, et cetera. But it is something that we can look into further and include. And again, if council agrees, come back with options.
Yes, short answer is if council wished, we could add conservation incentives as part of the study going forward.
Yeah, and in this kind of case too, especially since when experts do these studies too, they know where to look to. But yeah, if it comes on all ends too, because yes, I agree that not all options are good, especially when you look at who they're impacting to, especially some more lower income residents who live here too. So but yeah, I would be interested in that. But other than that, my only other question, which is well, it is what it is. So since the idea of this is starting a multi-year process, beyond our city staff and consultants for different parts of this, what other partners are we looking to have to assist after this resilience study is done too? Is there different local, regional, state, federal entities that we're pulling? Are we pulling different like academia, higher education to so that once this study is done to operationalize it? Because the only next step that really talks about is a rate study.
Yes, fair question. And ultimately, there's a lot to unpack in the study and a lot that I think we'll need to really look into in implementation of the study. I think the goal is that we have one or more sources that are identified as feasible and necessary for our needs. How we carry those out really will be embedded with different partners and different agencies. For example, we're already deeply embedded with Zone 3, our neighboring agencies for Lopez Lake water usage, which is a county operation that we contract with. We have the Northern City Management Association, so neighboring agencies that all pump out of the groundwater basin, so we all work together there. The county is looking to do more collaborative work with regards to desal, with regards to other kind of county-wide water efforts, so there's an obvious partner there. I think Cal Poly is beginning to get into the space, so covering higher education, they're seeing an opportunity to help support their local communities within our area. We're not a water island in this area, but yet we're not right now tapped into state water, getting water from Northern California. So we have to look creatively within our local communities. And Mr. Ray has a lot of water experience. He's been looking at different options and different scenarios, and we will look at every different partnership possibility to help address our water needs.
Okay. And the last question I have is, I did, then I just thought about something else when the word other alternatives came up. Is because the way that our staff report comes out right now, it notes that upon that, if this resiliency studies that happens, what was it? Basically, upon its completion, it would initiate a water rate study. Now, if we do have in this study identified other sources of funding, that obviously those processes take a while to apply for grants and whatnot too. Would it be better to have it come back to the council that part first to really look at what can we look at before a rate study occurs? Because if a rate study occurs, suddenly it's making all these assumptions that of many things unfunded versus areas where we could get funded.
Staff's plan is to bring forward the results of the water resiliency study first and have a robust conversation. That will include the potential for other funding sources. If your council did include that in the scope and the consultant came back with some different options and opportunities, we would have a conversation and deliberation with the council at that point, and then from there decide whether to initiate a water rate study at that point. The two are not necessarily one after the other per se. We just wanted to convey to the council that we're not starting a water rate study anytime soon. Our focus is on this water resiliency study and to see what the outcomes and conclusions are from that. And then after that point, we would implement and start a water rate study. We'll be 1 year out of the current study at that point, and the needs will continue to increase. So at some point, there will be growing need from a fiscal standpoint for a rate study, but the timing of that is really dependent upon what happens over the next year.
Okay, so even though it's kind of written as if one after the other and in the staff report, on a practical basis, if this resilience study gets completed, it doesn't mean automatically a rate study is initiated. Is that correct?
It wouldn't be automatic, but it would be pending council deliberation. It would be something that we would look to initiate sooner than later, given the fact that by that point we'll be a year out of having a current rate study, rate structure, and the needs will continue to grow over time. But that's a conversation with the council at that time to see if we want to initiate it at that moment.
Okay, that answers my question.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Tuggle?
Thank you for all the information. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. First of all, I know that there is the ability to limit new builds under drought conditions, but does state law provide any avenues for us limiting future build out because we are concerned about future water supplies?
So I can take that one.
Yeah.
If I can get the mic closer. So state law does actually very clearly prescribe the conditions under which a development stay or pause or freeze or moratorium is implemented. Essentially, what the state has come in and said is in order to do so, you have to be able to demonstrate an imminent threat to health and safety. And essentially, the direction from HCD has been that while not directly defined, what they consider an imminent threat is likely to occur at any moment, impending, ready to take place, happening soon, menacingly near, or threatening to occur immediately, dangerously impending. This provision is more stringent than the prior provisions that allowed certain moratorium provisions under 65858. And on top of that, cities are also required, if they are contemplating this, to reach out to HCD and provide them with what they're looking at doing. And it has to be approved by HCD before the city can actually implement it. So it's not, essentially the reason for these stringent protocols is because all too often what the state was finding is that cities were creating emergencies to prevent development, or they were saying, oh gosh, something that might happen 5 years from now, we need to pause. We're gonna stop everything because this thing may happen in 5 years from now. What the state has come in and basically said is, unless you can prove to us if this thing is going to happen now, you're not going to be able to pass any type of a stay or prevent development.
You may not have the answer to this, but is there any case law that sided with a city?
There's lots that haven't.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. I just thought. And then just to be really clear that all the infrastructure costs are for current use and that has no impact on future build, has no impact on the cost of estimated for infrastructure upgrades.
it's not entirely true. I mean, so it's a.
Let me ask the question differently. It might make it easier to
Yeah,
answer.
no,
If we decided absolutely no build, which we can't, but if we did that, would that change our infrastructure costs?
Slightly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any like real numbers on what that difference looks like?
Not off the top of my head. But,
Okay.
I mean, for sure, the majority of the capital improvement projects that are recommended are really to address existing system deficiencies.
And then
these were
those-
identified, and if you got to remember, in 2019,
Yeah.
when the study, the master plan was written, long before we really saw much uptick in development.
And then does the developer's impact fee take into consideration those infrastructure expenditures? Are like, will some of the impact fees cover that, their portion of that?
They cover both. So there's an impact fee that actually reimburses the city for the cost of investment the city made in the water system over past years. And then there are a couple of other development impact fees that cover the cost of upgrades, main extensions, and other things that are needed to support development.
Okay. Awesome, thank you. Then I had a couple questions about the scope and just some, also maybe just agreements. I'm thrilled to see what the possibility is for the development impact for water supply outside of infrastructure. You mentioned there's a possibility to look at in the study. State water could be great, but then during a drought, there is no extra state water. So, but my question on the scope, or one of the things suggested, is desal. And my understanding was you can't qualify for desalinization unless you already have recycled water programs. Is my understanding correct? Can anybody? That's what they were saying at the RAC, as far as they're doing this big desal study that we'll never be able to qualify for because we don't have recycled water.
Yes, Councilmember, I can speak to that. That reflects guidance from the California Coastal Commission in how they are reviewing potential desalinization projects. They have put forth.
I'm still hot, so don't shut the door. I know, I'm sweating.
Hey, we'll roll with it. That they want to see every effort being made in a local community for a recycled water project before the commission will consider a desal project in that area.
Okay. And then lastly, do we have an estimated cost for this study?
We have a budget allocation of $300,000 in the water fund. If we can have the study be done for less than that, we certainly would go for that. But that's what our best estimate was for putting a number in our budget. When we look at proposals, we'll look at the qualifications, we'll look at experience, we will look at cost, but that won't be the driving factor in identifying the study.
But we already have that amount budgeted out in the water fund?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be clear on that. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
No, I think most of the questions have been asked.
Okay.
Thank you. I had one, but I don't think it relates.
All right, I just had a couple questions. One of them is more of a clarifying one, and it's on the staff efforts slide about currently we don't have a diff that says for extra water when you're building, whether it's small, big, anything in between. We just have it basically for our water operation. So moving forward, we're looking at a diff that would include water supply, whether you're having one person move in or 50 people move in. This is how much water you need to bring in. Is that basically what we're looking at?
That's correct.
Okay. And then on the scope, it says engagement. What kind of idea of engagement are we looking at? Or is that's part of the study?
Absolutely. That would be a significant part of the study. And we're still kind of fleshing out what we would envision for this, but at a minimum, we would see a combination of forums, focus groups, survey being done, really trying to get a cross-section of viewpoints across the community. The firms that would work on this have their own education, communication, engagement team, and so they really would spend time diving into this. So it would be an iterative process working with our community at different levels. The focus group idea, I think, is one that really works out well in tackling complex topics where you can spend a couple hours really diving into aspects of the water system and getting some thoughtful, informed conversation and viewpoints. So still working that out. When we bring forward the agreement for your approval at the end of the year, we'll flesh that out further, and we'd be glad to take any input from the council on that as well. Tonight or going forward.
Okay. And who would take a lead on that community engagement efforts? Would it be the people we're working with or us or a combination of both?
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank
It would
you.
be led by the consultant, but ultimately coordinated by our staff team in how it gets done.
Of course. Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other questions before I open public comment? No? Okay. I will now open public comment on this item, and I have one speaker slip, Lauren Westfall.
Good evening. Again, thank you very much for mentioning that you guys are going to be reviewing the tier water rates. And thank you for asking the question as far as why our water was contaminated. The one thing I did notice in this presentation, it doesn't talk about all the past grant money that was given to the city for upgrading the water lines. 2016, Mr. Ray has an article that we got 1.6 million to upgrade water lines. In 2010, I think we got, or excuse me, 2016, we got 3 million. At one point, we got 2 million. The reports I read all say just various areas within the city. It does give me linear feet, but like I said, this presentation didn't discuss that there was previous lines that have already been replaced, and I would like to know exactly how many miles versus linear feet that have been replaced with the previous grant money. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to come speak on this item? Seeing nobody move forward, is there anybody on the line?
Yes, we have Brenda Auer.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
We can. Hello.
Great. Okay, I have a list. Are you ready? First of all, congratulations, Grover Beach. We're the lowest in conserving. We should award ourselves. I know just the council is in town. Most of the staff doesn't. But thank you, council, and thank you for the community for being the lowest. Way to go. As far as the contamination and the corrections, were any of those corrections due to potential construction and maybe replacements of sewer lines at the time? Also, I'd like to know, number 2, how much did we spend on Central Coast Blue? Would we have more reserves if we hadn't have spent that money? I'm kind of shocked. $300,000 is a lot of money. But I know that the Grover H2O group had asked for a study to be done. So I do commend you bringing this forward. Let's see. Is the reason the projects or lines Lauren's referencing didn't get done because we spent the money on Central Coast Blue? I know a lot of lines were replaced, and we, the scare tactic of all these miles, some of them already been replaced. Can we have accurate numbers? In this report, will you be using all of the future build, or can the report reflect today? We don't see an increase in our population. Most of these people buying here are due to census out of the area. And we've known in history, Grover Beach's population has gone down. So if you do this study, can you also reflect if the future builds aren't in it, what our water supply will be? And it seems to me like you could have a pause, a moratorium, till you do a water study so that we don't overbuild, because it sure looks like that's kind of where we're headed. And I think that might be a lot. I learned a lot tonight. Thank you for your time and your consideration. And I keep hearing a few years and 5 years, and maybe we should talk a little bit about today, because I think we're going to get more of that miracle rain. Maybe we should try and store it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else on the line? All right, I will close public comment on this item, and let's answer some questions regarding past grant money. Did those monies go towards previous projects and lines? Do you have any number on those lines prepared tonight?
I don't. I mean, I was project manager on both of the grant projects that the resident's referring to. They weren't significantly large. I mean, millions of dollars sounds like a lot, but when you're tearing up the street and taking a water main out and retying every single residence into it, the money goes pretty quickly. My recollection is it was a handful of blocks. One of the grants was specifically related to a census block where we had lower income census numbers, and we were able to basically replace about 4 square blocks of old steel 2-inch water mains and upgrade both the water mains and the services to our standard, which is an 8-inch plastic water main. And my recollection is the other one replaced about the same, about a couple square blocks.
Okay.
So sounds like a lot of money, but really the work was not that significant.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. And regarding the comment about contamination, the boil water notice due to construction, you already spoke to it just being just practices that had to be reviewed and processes.
Again, there was no specific source identified. So what they basically did is, surveyed the entire length of the Lopez water line and as well as the operation of the treatment plant. And they found nothing. There was no, construction related, anything they could really point to. Like I said, all they did find are things like, hey, you could do some grading around the sampling station and lower the grades a little bit and maybe repaint this and clean it up. The stuff is small in nature, but given the length of that Lopez line, there's a lot of work.
And just to add to that, the contamination issue was spotted in the Lopez distribution line upstream that affects all of us in Zone 3, not in our individual city line. We disconnected immediately. We've never had a contamination issue reported within our city. So it had nothing to do with construction of private construction or city public works construction in our city. It would have to do upstream on the Lopez Lake distribution system.
Go us. That's great. All right. Okay, so I'd like to bring it back for discussion regarding this item and some direction given to staff. Does anybody want to start our conversation at all? Anybody interested in starting the conversation?
Are
Go for
you
it.
looking?
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Are you looking to get this list shorter? The one you gave us? Is that the intent?
No, sir. We're looking to bring this to you to see if the council would like to include anything in the scope that perhaps we haven't included in this draft. We're looking to get that from the council so that we can ultimately get your concurrence on the right scope to proceed and conduct the RFP process for the study.
So would that include the grants, to look into getting grants and the tiered
Pending your
water?
conversation, I think you'll have in just a moment.
And I'm sorry,
Okay.
I should have started with that. When
Okay.
we were doing questions, I heard grant opportunities in the scope of work, incentive programs for conservation efforts, and then the community engagement, forums, focus groups, surveys, et cetera. That's the direction that I've heard so far. So would anybody like to add anything else other than what's already on this list? Go ahead.
I just want to make sure it was touched on up here, but I want to make sure that the development stay that was discussed ends up being part of the scope.
Yeah, that would actually be a separate item.
Would it?
That's being contemplated by both our city management and our city attorney's office.
Yes, we'll be the ones that will be looking into the
Okay.
availability of instituting something like that.
Okay. And then I think the only other one was, and you might have touched on it, the conservation? Okay. All right.
Since we're talking about resiliency, and maybe I'll ask a question first to get some information that'll help this, is when we did go on the boil water order, since we shut off from Lopez, went to our groundwater supply, and then, but others and stuff have used the groundwater supply too, that also use Lopez that shut off too, correct? How quickly did that impact the groundwater supply? And the reason why I bring this up is that I'm wondering if there needs to be a part about contingencies on contamination issues, because if it does, luckily it hasn't happened, from the last time I can remember in my lifetime, other than this incident, but when it does, it seemed like it had a pretty big impact on our other water supply. So how did it affect our other water supply when we all kind of went on that?
That's a great question, and fortunately, I actually got the answer this morning. Our consultant who works with us in the NCMA put together pumping records and groundwater. We had daily records of groundwater levels during that period of time. Fortunately, groundwater levels are not high, but they're higher than they've been in years past, and so there was a direct impact. We saw groundwater levels drop fairly significantly, a couple of feet actually, during the period of time when we all turned to groundwater pumping. But because of the groundwater levels at the time, it wasn't dramatic, as dramatic as we thought it might be. And we were comparing that to a 2013 incident, rather, where we also went on groundwater pumping, and it was during a period of time when the groundwater levels were quite low, and we saw it drop as much as 6 feet that period of time. So we were surprised. We thought we'd see a higher impact, but it did. Groundwater levels did drop a couple feet. We did not get to the deep well index concern level, but we headed toward it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the best way to put in the scope, but something related to that, if that kind of situation happens, almost the infamous emergency contingency, because luckily we weren't in a drought year. I'll put it that way. If we were, that kind of drop, I'm sure would have had a more severe, occurrence. So something along, and like I said, I'm not sure if it's a different line item or how it's built into this, but something along the lines of us being prepared, because contamination, stopping us, having us in that situation, I see as a water resiliency issue, kind of for obvious reasons. And then, yes, and in particular when it comes to the potential external funding such as grants, and this is a clarification if the rest of the council is fine with it, is because all the different areas that are going to be identified as far as particular funding needs that are being recommended within the resiliency system, that if they're aligned with them, so we see that, okay, this source of funding could fund X, Y, and Z, so that there's the totality of options would be apparent, because sometimes these grants, just are very broad where it's not clear, for instance, it could be this project or this project, but obviously they're not, they're limited to as far as what you could go for. So as far as those options, and then as far as the water conservation part, just for clarification, if the rest of the council is fine with it, is that not just improving our kind of general incentive programs we have already, and then looking at other ones people do, but then when it comes to the potential incentivizing that we could do for all different forms of new developments, yes, residential, commercial, all those different options at least too, because as it was noted, we're preempted from certain mandates now from doing that locally, but at least across the board, that if there are different ways to do it better, then looking at it as well. So those were a few things in addition to, or maybe in clarification of some of these aspects brought up. I'm hoping that the rest of you could agree with that, just so that whoever would do such a study doesn't get confused of the intention, because we say a lot of stuff too, but they could misunderstand. So are those okay with others?
Just a question for clarification first, council member, just regarding the issue of contamination, how that fits in. I look at the bullet point about and to analyze water supply and demand. So part of that to me speaks to the various risks involved with any of our water supply sources. And so if we're looking at a risk of going down to one source, groundwater, then that's something that I think could be addressed as part of the study. We could work with our consultant to just make sure that they encompass that as a risk factor in having a Lopez Lake source that may go down, hypothetically, because of future contamination issues.
Yeah, and that's fine with me, as long as they understand to include that kind of component, since it's something that people experienced pretty directly. I mean, we all did during that time.
It was a very unique moment that we went through back in May, yes.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if the results were not totally conclusive, I'm not sure what that means for it not happening again, because it's easier to address things that are a little bit more conclusive. So, but yeah, I'm not sure what the rest of the council thinks on some of those pieces I talked about. But I'll let others talk first. I'm just putting that out there.
I had written down for the emergency, if there was anything, some type of contamination, could we bundle that idea with like drought conditions and what we would do under those conditions, like almost like an emergency state of preparedness. Yeah. So, but that would, again, what you said, Mr. Bronson, is that would be under the analysis of water supply and demand.
I think it could fit there as part of that work effort.
Okay.
And someone else on the council is quite familiar with emergency preparedness over there, I see.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then, okay, so go ahead.
I just have a really quick question. You mentioned the development impact fee for future water supply, or to put into it. Would that be part of the study, or is that a separate conversation?
Also separate conversation.
That's what I thought, and that's why it's not included in the scope of the study. And there's no way to squeeze that in, really? Okay, cool.
Anything else? Mayor Pro Tem? No? Okay. All right. So in addition to our scope of work here, I have looking at the grant opportunities, incentive programs, and conservation efforts. And this means all efforts across the board, whether it be commercial, residential. Am I understanding that correctly? Okay, cool. Everything.
And if you need to, because we have governmental entities, they're operating with the city and governmental as well, though that's a very different relationship, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then really honing in on the community engagement with forums, focus groups, surveys, et cetera. Working with the development stay and the scope of work with the legal team, you guys are working on that. See, I'm just reading through my notes, excuse me. And then the emergency contamination contingency, whatever that goes into the analysis of water supply and demand. All right. Was there anything else? Any other direction? No. Okay.
And well,
go ahead.
It's not on the scope part, but it's the last point I brought up that I do want to. I do want us to give some clear direction to staff to potentially that, if and when this study gets done, that it's not, we don't have a compulsory automatic, rate increase study that occurs to you, that there is a council discussion that looks at this before that occurs. Because if, for instance, if a lot of the different funding options come out and kind of cover a lot of the bases too, there might not be a need. I don't know. Obviously, that's why we have these studies to do, but to make that clear that that one doesn't just lead to the other, that it does require some direction for that as well.
I think it says that loud and clear in the staff report.
But is that agreed by the rest
And I
of the
think we
council?
discussed it tonight. I think that's loud and clear.
Okay.
Staff would
But
agree.
I also don't want to hold us down and hold us down for anything that might happen in the future. But again, it's loud and clear to staff.
Okay. That
Comfortable?
sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. So we're receiving this report. Do you need a motion for this item? Nope.
No, just policy direction, which staff has received. Thank you to your council for your thoughtful deliberation, and this is a good example of the work that we're going to be doing over the next 2 years to address water system issues. And thank you to your council. Thank you to our staff team who pulled this together. We've got a lot of work to do, but we're starting off on the right foot. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And thank you so much, Mr. Ray. Thank you, Ms. Martin, for also answering some questions. All right. Now we will move on to our council committee reports. And I will start with Councilmember McCrory Driscoll.
No reports this evening.
Okay. Councilmember Tuggle.
I just have one. I attended the RAC meeting this last week, I think. And the whole meeting was just about the consolidation of wells, potential consolidation plan if we ever chose to in the county. It doesn't have a lot of impact here in Grover. We're not well dominant to the point that we have a critical mass that we could hook up to a system. And it's a study, not anything to actually do. They will be coming forward at the next meeting with the next part of the conversation around looking at desalinization and what that could possibly look like. But again, these are all studies. They're not action items for the county.
All right. Councilmember Wyrick.
None of my committee assignments met since our last meeting.
Mayor Pro Tem.
None of mine have met
No.
either.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
This week.
Okay. Okay, yeah. All right. I just have an update though. I had assignments. So we had an RTA board meeting, and at this meeting we had updates on changes, including our Route 27 and 28 changes. Just to report back that ridership has been very positive, and within 4 days, over 40 boardings happened on the changes on Atlantic Avenue. We have received some correspondences. I believe they maybe have emailed, maybe not, I'm not sure, our council as well, from neighbors at one of the stops, and we'll be monitoring that area. But the space was chosen after, a lot of staff time and years of kind of monitoring the area to see that that was the best possible place for the time being. So we're going to continue to monitor that and, communicate with those residents that are near. But again, it's been a very positive change with 40 boardings in 4 days. I thought that was pretty amazing. So that's it for my council assignments. We'll now go on to council communications. So Councilmember McCrory Driscoll.
Just one quick comment. I want to thank everyone that emailed City Council regarding developments and the growth that's happening. along Grand, both good and bad. We appreciate the feedback. It's interesting for me, being new to City Council, and I just think it bears repeating. I think we heard it from our audience today. A lot of these decisions did happen years ago. And so just reminding people that growth and development is slow. And what we're seeing today isn't the result of anything other than years of planning. And so we are going to have to kind of follow that and look at it and make sure it's what we want moving forward. But I just want to thank everybody for sharing their comments and reminding everyone that there's really nothing we could change today for those that are already broken ground and far along into the planning process. But we will pledge to continue to keep an eye on things as we grow and evolve as beautiful Grover Beach. So thank you.
Great comments. Okay, Councilmember Tuggle.
I had 3 and I can only remember 2. But I know what it is. I got it now. Okay, so I was hoping to have a conversation and I don't know what this could look like, and this is more of a question for staff, but oftentimes we have community members come up or contact us with requests that demonstrate that there may not be a context of understanding that would make them effective at getting their needs met. So, and sometimes they can't get their needs met. But can we do a better job as we're going through this massive growth and change, which is scary and uprooting to people? How could we do a better job of educating? Okay, truth. I did teach American government for 16 years. So I'm looking at this all the time at the college, right? So there's a disconnect. And let me give kind of a for example, just from today. We had a community member express concern about the elevation or the aesthetics of those buildings. I'm not certain I fully understand, nor do our community members understand really if they want to impact change, what the pathway forward is for that, and if that's even in their jurisdiction. And I'll balance that with, I've gotten multiple complaints about a new business that has painted a wall gold. I've gotten about a dozen complaints about that. And they're like, you need to stop them. Well, I don't have that authority. That's not in my jurisdiction. So trying to help people, if we don't have control over the gold wall or the elevation, is there a pathway to getting that? Where's the right place to start? As I think some of the frustration that I hear is people are frustrated and so they come here, but we don't always have the jurisdiction or the authority that people may perceive that we do. I cannot repaint a wall or require somebody to do that. Now, I am aware they do that in SLO and they have requirements, but that's a whole different kind of conversation. If that's really where we want to go, then we need to have that conversation and help people understand how they achieve their goals if they are achievable legally. So that's been on my mind a lot. I know that there's been concerns about CCB, but I also would love if staff could speak briefly to the fact that you've already started that conversation. That would be great. And then I hear the parking concerns. We all did. We all do. And yes, we're paying attention to that and trying to be mindful of that as we go forward. And lastly, I've been holding on this forever, but as we go to our block party on the 20th, I think that we should rename, I'm doing it. I think we should name Grand Avenue Beach Boulevard. I'm sorry, that's a good marketing thing. It's fun. It would put us on the map in a really special way, in my humble opinion. And I've crowd tested it quite a bit. And thus far, only positive feedback. Even positive feedback on people that don't agree on anything else about how the city's moving or growing. So it could be a win. So that's it. But yeah, staff, if you could just kind of mention where we are with CCB and what's coming down the pipeline. Thanks.
And as a segue, I'm going to mess up that order really quick. Sorry, everybody else. But Mr. Bronson, would you mind giving us an update? At our last council meeting, we directed staff to reach out to the city of Pismo Beach and get an update on the community outreach outreach efforts that they could and should be doing. So could you give us an update on that, please?
Sure, be glad to, Mayor. Thank you. per council direction from the last meeting, I did meet last week with my counterpart in Pismo Beach, Mr. Jorge Garcia, regarding finding out more about where they are with their potential project and the outreach that they're planning, and sharing where our council was coming from and some of the questions and concerns that have arisen. It's my understanding that their council will receive an update on the project in October, including a project timeline. I did share with Mr. Garcia the need for extensive outreach and engagement within our community, and he is committed to doing this for properties nearby the proposed site on Huber Street, but also on a citywide basis. What we're thinking about is having some kind of community meeting that would be in October. That would be at one of our facilities, but put on by Pismo Beach as the applicant. This is their project. This is their development. They are an applicant. We would just be providing a venue for them to host this meeting, and we would attend it as well to provide some responses to cities questions in particular, but ultimately it's a Pismo Beach project that they would speak to more in detail. And then from there could be additional outreach opportunities later this year. Coming to the council meeting at some point this year for an informational presentation makes sense as well. So we're working through that. But bottom line, over the next month, we'll be seeing some additional outreach and engagement coming forward, led by Pismo Beach as the applicant and developer of this potential project. For now, if there are questions that come up, I would be glad to take them and work with our staff to help provide answers and information to Pismo Beach, and ultimately we probably will have a staff liaison helping serve in that role going forward. I will mention that there was a presentation in Pismo Beach back on June 23rd that is available online that shows what the potential project is now compared to what was proposed several years ago. So that's on the website for Pismo Beach right now. Community members can take a look at that and see what's being contemplated now, knowing that it could still change and evolve as this goes forward.
Thank you. I know there's lots of questions from our community members, and I want to make sure that the city of Pismo Beach, those are the ones that are addressing the questions, since they are the owners of this Central Coast Blue project. So I don't want to be answering on behalf of that, but I would love to learn along with our community as well. So I know that we have received questions about an amended EIR. I was wondering if council would have council concurrence on requesting our staff just ask if there is an amended EIR. When I spoke to Mayor Wagi, he said it was online, and I'm not sure if there is an amended EIR, but I would like to maybe ask staff to get that information if there's concurrence from the council. Yeah? Okay, thank you so much. All right. Okay. And then I'll say my other comments later, but I wanted to mention the Central Coast Blue. Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to Councilmember Wyrick.
I'll get to that in a second. So yes, I attend the Filipino Community Center, Grover Beach's Barbecue. Yes, I attend the Grover City Grange's Pancake Breakfast as usual. And also, yes, after our last city council meeting, I was invited by one of the residents who actually did public comment, Donna De La Rosa and stuff, to meet with some of the residents that live in the location near Central Coast Blue Regional Recycling Water Authority's potential project. And that was a couple days ago, this past Saturday, September 6th. It was in their neighborhood. And since there was since I didn't have council authorization for staff time, it was just me with no city staff. I did make it clear from the beginning that because it's just, as I'm an individual council member, I'm not representative of our city government. They're my opinions and thoughts. Some that people see on my email signature lines all the time, and that as an individual council member, I don't have executive authority because, as we all know up here, our only authority is when we're actually up here in an agendized public meeting. Making with a majority decision. So I did make that clear as far as the context where I was coming from. Now, a lot of them had spoken at our last city council meeting during public comment. Others who were there didn't, though, too. So it was helpful to hear a lot of them talk about their different concerns. Like I said, most of them we heard the last time, and some they were echoed during this conversation. And one of the things that was super crystal clear is that they just still feel like they're in the dark, that they don't have someone to go to. And I mentioned some of these different aspects that the city manager mentioned, were possibilities, including, my own thoughts that if Pismo is going to do some of these outreach things, that they should do literally for those residents in that immediate area, a site walking tour, because if they're like, hey, well, you're talking about that's right here in this spot. I live right there. I mean, different things that are a lot more clear to address their different needs, or at least to explain different aspects that they're curious about. But ultimately, the longer they're waiting to get details, the more frustrating and concerning they're getting too. Because I even did show some of the different slides from that June 23rd meeting that the city manager referenced, and they were there. And did anything change since then? Maybe, I don't know too. I mean, that's just a practical aspect of it. So I do hope that both the Central Coast Blue Regional Water, Recycled Water Authority, and the City of Bisbee Beach do make those clear and proactive efforts to engage those residents around their area to address this overarching communication challenge sooner than later. And that on our staff side, because the city, we have our own lane of how we deal with different areas in general too, noise, odors, how construction happens in our city, et cetera, that they have a clear liaison as well on our city staff side, because right now, obviously I'm not the technical expertise. I said I'm not a lawyer, not a CPA, I'm not a civil engineer who specializes in water projects too. So, who are the right people that have those answers? And it was really clear too that they wanted to be able to integrate their feedback into the process before decisions get near finalization too. And so that's one area I really want to encourage our neighboring city and stuff on, our own staff too, to address and bridge that as well. And also, it was requested, actually, I didn't know she was going to request it, but she did request during public comment as far as agendizing the question of the consolidated permit that's been brought up. And because of how I heard the residents talk about this and all the confusion involved, I do think we should agendize that too. I'm not sure within and she mentioned at the next meeting, I'm not sure how practical that is too, but I think it is important because the question of where our city is, where this project lies, I explained actually a lot of the dynamics of what happened last year to this year. That was best of my knowledge, but there is a lot of pieces that are still not clear. So I would ask for concurrence on agendizing that part too.
As far as the consolidated permit goes, are we even at that step? I for Central Coast Blue, they have, I don't think that they have done this outreach yet because they're so early in this project. I don't want to put the cart before the horse kind of situation. And do we have concurrence to agendize the consolidated permit, or? I don't know if it's a moot point, though. That's just my opinion on it.
It's a timing.
It's a timing thing. So, do you have any?
I'm just going to jump in and say,
Yeah.
if we continue to have further discussion on this, we're going to have to agendize it. So it's just, I would encourage
either
to
So
come
yes-
up with a direction.
Okay, so yes or no, put it on an agenda coming forward. The consolidated
Put
permit.
what on the
The,
agenda?
the consolidated. to
Just better
amend-
understanding it or to amend it?
I mean, it's, if you're going to put it on the agenda too, might as well make it something actionable, but versus having it on next meeting if there is something actionable on it though. But that's really up to, and like I said, that's why I asked for concurrence from everyone, because alone I can't, define this whole thing.
So
I would.
if I could jump in,
Go ahead.
what I can do is I can send council a memo.
Thank you.
Under attorney-client privilege regarding our options, regarding that item, because it is something that we're looking into.
Okay, thank you.
And I think that could be a jumping off point to then including the permitting aspect as part of a future agenda item that we would have with the council. We would see that happening this fall, not something that would be ready to go at the next council meeting or even the one right after that, but something that we could build into what we're intending to bring forward this fall. That would be done also in tandem with the community outreach that Pismo will be leading over the next month.
Okay. So are we in agreement of that? Okay, we are in agreement of that. Thank you for that assistance on that. Good? Okay. All right, Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, thank you for coming to the pancake breakfast, Councilman Wyrick. And Mayor, were you there? Did I see you there?
I was not there.
didn't
I'm
think so,
sorry.
yeah.
I was not there.
Yeah, I didn't hear you.
Make it.
Yeah, Grover City Grange did about 140 pancakes. And I would like to personally extend a personal invitation to the police chief and any officer that might be working that day to stop by so we might buy you breakfast. So, and any time, it's, the first Sunday of every month. So it's just between 8 and 11. But we'd love to see the officers there if they can make it. and just show our appreciation for what you do. And I think that was it
Good.
for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just to finish up my council communications, I just want to say, kind of piggybacking off of Councilmember McCory Driscoll, I just appreciate everyone's comments and getting involved, coming here, and speaking your mind. So I just really appreciate the comments and the input. I also did want to give a shout out to Miss Westfall for cleaning those bulb outs. I had done a post about basically what Mr. Arnoldson was saying, what you can do for your community, and Ms. Westfall was out basically the next day cleaning up the bulb outs, along with other community members, had messaged me and texted me. And so I just really appreciate our community trying to keep our streets cleaned and working on that. So I just really appreciate that, and thank you. I also attended we presented to the grand jury, Ms. Erickson and I presented to the grand jury, and this was where all the cities came together and just presented on what's happening in our cities. And a lot of our communities are dealing with the same things, like old infrastructure, state mandates, and we're all trying to find the best way together to move forward with that, but also individually. So I thought it was really neat to hear that we're all kind of in the same boat. So that was very positive, but that was it for my council communications, and I will now send it over to City Manager for your reports and comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one item from me this evening covering our special events. So last Friday, we did have another outdoor movie event at 16th Street Park. It was a Minecraft movie, and was a well-attended, beautiful night out there. I was there with my youngest son and had a wonderful time out there. Kudos to Larry and Rosie for their great work as always, and putting on these great, fun, free community events. We had some great comments from people afterwards. Really enjoyed that. Next event coming up a week from this coming Sunday. It is this coming Sunday is the 36th annual Dune Run, Sunday the 14th at 9 o'clock at the Beach Plaza, end of Grand Avenue. Always a fun, low-key but enjoyable community run and walk along our beautiful beachfront area. So looking forward to being out there with that. And then, as Councilmember Tuggle mentioned earlier, our West Grand Block Party is coming up on September 20th, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock on West Grand Avenue between 5th and 7th Street. We are closing the street from probably mid-morning until mid-afternoon. The event itself is from 12 to 3, but we got closed on both sides in advance. We'll have a variety of food and drink options, live music, over 30 vendors, kids activities, free haircuts from Red Chair Barbershop, free face painting. I believe we'll have a dunk tank for select city officials. More information on that to come.
Chief, I'm looking at you.
I'll be working in uniform then.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And once again, kudos to Larry and for helping coordinate this inaugural event to celebrate West Grand Avenue, not just the Streetscape project, but just the vitality of West Grand Avenue in general. And we look forward to a wonderful event.
Good. Okay, thank you. City Attorney reports and comments, and why don't you lead us into closed session?
Thank you, Council. Mayor and Council, I have no comments. I will go into closed session, however. There are two items this evening. The first is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to paragraph 4, subdivision D of section 54956.9 of the government code, deciding whether to initiate litigation. One case, this is the Alvogen opioid settlement, very similar, or exactly similar to our prior meeting where we discussed an opioid settlement. Item 2 is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 or 3 of subdivision D of government code section 54956.9, 2 cases.
Thank you. I will now open for public comment on this item. Is there anybody on the line? Sorry, go ahead. Did you want to come speak?
You didn't answer a general public question, or did I miss it?
I think I did answer quite a few of them. I'm so sorry. I did really quick. Time out. Everybody time out. You had a lot of questions. I think that I'll touch base back with you and get these questions so that we can compile them all together. Okay, cool. All right. No problem. So now for closed session, I will now open public comments on this item. Seeing nobody come forward, is there anybody on the line? I will now close public comment on this item, and we will move into closed session. Thank you.